Hello everyone, I'm Caroline, and I'm excited to share my story with you, despite it being a bit hard to talk about. You see, in reality, I actually hate sharing things about myself with others. It's hard to explain, but have you ever felt like you just didn't like being around people, and even seeing them or talking to them gets on your nerves? Well, that's exactly how I feel every single day. You might be thinking, what a cold-hearted girl, right? But trust me, it's not like that at all. Stay with me, and I'll explain everything to you. My story begins with my parents. Like most people, my parents dreamt about sharing their world with a child and building a beautiful family. I was their little baby, and that is why I was spoiled. Like, embarrassingly over-the-top spoiled. Looking back at old photos, I could see that my parents had given me every single thing I had ever asked for. However, all of these things were just materialistic. The truth was, they never made an effort to focus on my personality and interests. And this is where the problems began. Up until I was in first grade, life was pretty peaceful. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so I never had to go to kindergarten before starting school like all the other kids. Because of that, I never really socialized with other kids. So you can probably imagine the nightmare I went through when I started school and suddenly had to deal with all of these other people. I had to listen to every single child screaming and being hyperactive. I was in complete shell shock. And on top of all this, an older kid approached me and he tried to hold my hand. He smelled so bad and his hands were dirty. I got scared and pushed him away and started hysterically crying. I made such a scene. And shortly after, my mom arrived to pick me up and took me home. On the way back home, I was shaking uncontrollably. I was traumatized. I thought to myself, that school was a place that I never wanted to go back to ever again. My mother didn't quite get what was happening. She was so confused. You might be thinking that I was being overly dramatic, but the truth is I really hated it there. And after that incident, it didn't get any better. Of course, my weird behavior seriously worried my mom, and it just got worse when the school counselor called her and said that if I kept failing to engage with the other kids, the school would need to take some measures and investigate if the reasons for my odd behavior were because I was coming from an unhealthy home. They were even suspicious that I might have been getting physically abused. That really put my poor parents in an awkward position. A position where everyone thought they were mistreating me. My parents started blaming themselves for my social awkwardness and my lack of interaction with people. It was such a difficult time. My parents had done nothing wrong in raising me, and they were just absolutely clueless about why I was acting so strange. One evening, my parents and I were having dinner in peace when suddenly we heard a loud knock on the door. They were knocking nonstop. The noise was unbearable. I remember hiding behind the couch and covering my ears with my hands. When my dad opened the door, a police officer came in and said that my school's counseling committee had assigned him to run a surprise checkup to make sure I was doing okay. However, when the policeman saw me, I looked anything but okay. Anyone who saw me in that state, hiding behind the couch, cowering in fear, would have been extremely worried about me. That night, my parents were arrested and forced to spend the night in custody. And I was taken to a little room and questioned by child services. They asked me so many questions, and I was very uncooperative. Hours turned into days, and eventually they began to realize that this wasn't about my parents, and that I was just a strange kid who was quite simply afraid of everything. After that, people started talking. Rumors were going around about my parents, but most of the gossip was about how much of a weird child I was. The child who caused her parents to spend a night in prison. Unfortunately, I hated myself since I was a little child, and I hated being this weird and awkwardly quiet person, and it never went away as I got older. In fact, with time, that became my sole identity. The weirdo, quiet girl. I even used to believe that I was a bad person. I mean, if I was a good, decent person, then why hadn't I just let the social workers know that my parents had done nothing wrong? It felt like the whole world was against me, and it continued in this way until I became a teenager. I was never able to express myself, talk to people, or socialize in the slightest. I was just totally awkward all the time. Imagine feeling like there was no place you could go to when you felt sad. No place you could retreat to feel safe from the world. I felt so completely out of it. I just didn't fit in anywhere, it seemed. There was no place for me in this world. These dark thoughts haunted me all the time, and I couldn't escape from them. However, one day, I found something that gave me comfort. I started drawing, and it helped me empty out some of the negative energy I had stored inside me. Getting involved with art started helping me tremendously. Even my mom had noticed how much I enjoyed it. She encouraged me to continue. And after a while, life stopped being that harsh. In fact, lots of things got much better. I was making art and people were appreciating it. Not only my parents, but also my art teacher who expressed great admiration for my work. I finally felt like I belonged, like I'd found an outlet to express myself through. My paintings and drawings started attracting a lot of attention from everyone, and my school started displaying them in their art gallery. The more people liked my work, the more I felt I fit in. Eventually, I couldn't stop. I spent every waking moment painting, and some nights I didn't even sleep. I just painted all night long. A local gallery in our town asked me if I'd be interested in running an exhibition, and I agreed. I didn't realize the mistake I was making, though. I spent weeks preparing for it. I completely isolated myself and painted non-stop. When the day of the exhibition came, my mom took me to the gallery to set up, and as people started arriving, I started panicking. That's when I had my first panic attack. I don't remember much of what happened next, but I just know I fainted and my parents had to take me home. The exhibition I'd spent so long preparing for went to waste. I didn't even get to be there for the opening. My parents were seriously worried now. The doctor contacted my school and had them give me some time off. They said I'd had some kind of burnout and needed to rest and recuperate. For the next month, I spent all my time in bed. I didn't even paint. I just surfed the net and slept. One day, I decided to look up my symptoms, and I couldn't believe what I was reading. Why hadn't I done this earlier? It explained everything. According to the search results, I had autism. I was devastated. I'd always known there was something wrong with me, but I didn't think it could be something like autism. For the next few weeks, I just lay in bed in the dark, feeling miserable. Pretty soon, I also stopped eating. I didn't want to do anything anymore. Life felt hopeless. I was so weak I could barely even walk to the bathroom at the end of the hall. One day, my mom forced me to go for a walk with her out to the garden to get some fresh air. On the way downstairs, I fainted. My mom rushed me to the hospital, and they ran a bunch of tests. They made me stay overnight so they could monitor my health. One of the nurses was really kind to me, and I found myself opening up to her. I told her that I had autism, and she looked very surprised. She ran off to get a doctor. They came over to me and assured me that I definitely did not have autism, and that other than a weakened immune system due to lack of nutrition, I was perfectly healthy and that they just wanted to keep me in for a few nights to monitor my eating habits. I started crying. I'd gone my whole life so far feeling like an alien, and finally I'd found autism and was so sure that that's what I had. And now this doctor was telling me I was actually fine and healthy. I felt so confused, as if I were back at square one, back to being that awkward weirdo girl. The doctors left me to try and calm down for the night, and then I heard a voice from behind the curtain. There was a girl about my age standing there, and she asked if she could come in. Even though I felt vulnerable and shy, I said yes for some reason. She sat next to my bed and introduced herself as Celine, and started explaining that she was also here because she'd stopped eating and her parents had been worried about her. As I listened to her talk, something inside me shifted, and I felt like for the first time I could actually communicate with someone. I started talking to her about my art and how I felt awkward around people, and she said she felt exactly the same. Soon we realized how much we had in common, and I went to sleep that night smiling. I finally had a friend that understood me. It was the best feeling in the world. The more I got to know Celine, the more I felt I belonged. She made me feel that I wasn't so strange after all, and that just because I'm not the most social person on the planet doesn't mean I'm any less of a person. It's honestly crazy to think I've gone all these years identifying as a weirdo, when in actual fact it's just my personality and I'm just different from other people. We can't all be super bubbly and outgoing. I wish I'd met Celine earlier when I was a kid. But then again, sometimes we need to go on these self-growth journeys alone, and better late than never, right? Here's to friendship. Did you like my story? Please comment below and share your thoughts with me. Also, don't forget to like my story and subscribe to this channel for more.